Awesome. So with me today, I've got Rob Lennon, who is, I'm sure he needs no introduction, but the man is an absolute beauty when it comes to the tech and the startup and the AI space. So Rob, man, thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, me too, man. I've been looking forward to it for a while. So I'm doing a case study on creative business partnerships when it comes to merging things like AI tech and tools with other creators who have been in the space for a while and doing their own thing. And I just kind of wanted to start by getting into that. But I thought before we touch on that, maybe you could just kind of tell me what it was like for you in that emotional moment when you realized that, like, holy cow, what I have is actually going to work here.
Oh man. You know, uh there was a moment last year when I was building an audience around writing and business and being a creator, and I was building this writing system. And I just for fun put it into AI to see if the AI could handle it.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember feeling sick, like physically sick, because it was doing so much work,
Yeah.
like that it was just doing like everything, or it felt like at the time it was probably 80% of the work. And I just remember this moment of it was I've rarely ever felt this way physically. Like I was just ill for the world because I knew that things were changing so massively. And that kind of set me on this path where I had to make a decision, which was like, do I want to participate in this change? The way we write, the way we think, the way we operate. AI was about to change all that. And if I do participate in that, I'm going to accelerate it because I'll be spreading the word. I'll be teaching people how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I love writing, and I was using AI to write. Um, but then I realized the opposite of that was like not being involved and letting other people decide how this was going to play out.
Mm-hmm.
And and then I started feeling sick for that outcome. So that was like this first awesome moment. But then when I released that, what came of that, which was my first AI course, and I did 10 grand in pre-sales on Christmas Eve. I'd never seen those kinds of numbers before. Like it
Yeah.
was just absolutely bonkers. And it was to the point of not even um like the numbers were too big. My body didn't know what to do with it anymore. Like it was like I had maxed out my reaction,
Yeah.
and then they just kept going up and up and up. And it's just like I remember waking up and I had made like $7,000 while I was sleeping,
Man.
and just thinking like, who makes money like that while they're sleeping? Like that was more than I would make in a month, like
Yeah.
previously, type stuff. So, um, yeah, incredible stuff.
And that must feel like everything's gonna flip from that moment on, right? Like you've tapped into something that's kind of life changing, and it must seem like all of the doors were open, and you kind of needed to figure out how to get in front of it, I guess.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're onto something, and so you want to stay. Yeah, you like kind of like you said, stay. You want to stay in front, and so I
Mm-hmm.
realized like this lightning strike moment that I've engineered. How do we keep it going? How do we like what's it going to look like in 3 or 6 months? Is this like a anomaly, or is this something
Mm-hmm.
that I can sustain? And when my second course did as well as my first course, like that was a really huge moment for me because it was like, oh, okay, like this isn't just a flash in the pan and it's over. I
Yeah.
mean, things have changed since then. This was like 10 months ago, but uh yeah, it it I knew that I was like this was a start of a new era. And it was almost like, get when you get a job, or you get into a relationship, or like there's certain things where you just like you move to a new city, everything around you is all changing. And but this was like it was different. It was like something I'd done to myself, that I'd kind of created, that I was in charge of the direction of, that I had to figure it all out. There
Mm-hmm.
was no city or partner or like
Yeah.
boss to like tell me what to do. Like this was all me.
That's awesome, man. And just one thing you kind of made me think of is like it for me at least when it comes to learning how to use AI, it's really forced me to kind of rework my own mental models for how I work because it isn't so much about the output anymore. It's like it's become about kind of making like a decision making framework around things and just like finding new ways to interact with the data instead of creating that, right?
Yeah. I mean, AI ultimately it's inputs and outputs. It's like, what do we have? What are we
Mm,
trying to get? And then it's up to the human to solve for that middle piece of like, what's the instruction that kind of gets us there, something like that. And there was even a study that showed that people who were using I forget what benchmark they had, but they were like studying their intelligence. And people who were using AI on a regular basis scored higher on the intelligence metric
mm,
over time, because and the thinking was, they had to really start thinking procedurally through a problem. How do we solve this?
Yeah.
What are the steps to take? What's the context? Like it's really actually quite good for thinking, which I love, because there's always the possibility that we get lazy with AI and that we stop thinking. And
Mhm.
the research seemed to suggest that people generally do the opposite. Um, but yeah, it's a completely different way of thinking, and it also it gets very meta, right? It's like you start thinking, how do I actually make a decision? Or like,
Yeah.
I have this idea or this belief or this habit or this skill. Like, what is that actually composed of? And then how does that translate into an instruction for the language model that doesn't inherently know or believe or is able to do the things that I do? How do I like translate that into the real world? I think it's really fascinating.
Totally. And like it kind of puts us into this feedback loop of us trying to train the AI, and then the AI's response kind of trains us in how to prompt it better. And then it's just this cyclical kind of uprising, right?
Yeah, yeah. You definitely learn a lot, and which is also why, like, if the first prompt doesn't work, I really encourage people to like make sure you go back and like try a different approach, because
Mhm.
sometimes it's 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 just as likely that, like, you kind of went down the wrong path and it didn't find the relationships between the words that it needed to find. Doesn't mean the AI isn't up to the task though.
So what motivated you to initiate your collaboration with Erica Schneider?
Yeah, so Erica was one of um she's someone I found online in, like, I don't know, June last year or something like that. She was one of the first people on Twitter that I really identified with. And she's a writer, an editor. She's quirky, she's kind of sassy, she's witty, but also like writes really good educational content and stuff that nobody else tends to write. Like, she has a really advanced understanding of the English language and how to move things around. And see, the writing tips you get from her are like, on a different level from most people.
Mhm.
But I just loved how funny she was. And so I used to I used to comment like hilarious thing, or what I thought was hilarious things, like basically dad jokes most of the time on her stuff, and back and forth. So we had this relationship. And fast forward to a couple months ago when we were talking, and she's like, "Hey, I'm doing this course, and people keep asking me, how do you do AI with this?" And she's like, "And I don't know." Like, she had had kids around the time when like ChatGPT had come out, and so she had been preoccupied with other things and hadn't really had time to learn how to use AI. And so we just kind of came up with this idea of like, well, what if I sort of take all your frameworks and I translate them into chatbots, into prompts, and we just loved it, and it seemed like it would solve a huge problem for her audience. And so it kind of started as this very organic just discussion between sort of friends, people who know each other in business, and evolved from there.
And then so how was the partnership structured financially? Was it like a revenue share, or how did you guys work that out?
Yeah. So in Eric's case, like, she's a top voice on LinkedIn. She's got a big audience there and a
Mhm.
decent audience on Twitter. And I'm sort of the opposite, or now X. And I'm sort of the opposite. I have a huge audience on X and decent audience on LinkedIn. So we both brought an audience to the table, and we were both going to do about half the content. So we ended up doing a 50-50 split. Um, I think in most cases where people would do a collaboration, it's not going to be that well balanced, right? Because it was like we both were bringing the distribution side and the knowledge side in almost equal
Mhm.
measure. And that was really kind of lucky for us. And I think we were both really happy to do 50-50. I think that some people might, like, if she was a nobody, let's say she was just a brilliant writer, but had zero audience, no one knew her name, nothing like that, she wouldn't have been able to drive, tens of thousands of dollars in sales on the
Mhm.
basis of that audience. And therefore, sort of her percentage, even if her knowledge was great, it wouldn't have been worth as much. But yeah, we just split it right down the middle.
Nice. And what's probably pretty unique about your partnership as well is like there's almost no crossover, I imagine, between both of your audiences, right? Like your audience is kind of unique compared to who hers is.
Well, some people knew both of us, and
Yeah.
part of that was that I used to write a lot more about writing, business
Mm.
marketing, audience building, and Erica also being writing about writing and editing. We had some overlap, and there's this part of X, these sort of micro communities on the platform, or what back then was Twitter, where it was kind of like all the good people. Now I'm being really judgy. The like people who were on the business side of Twitter, but who also like cared about on authenticity, originality, who weren't just there to hustle and make money, but were also there to kind of like be good human beings. And
Hmm.
we both were sort of part of that world. And so there were people who maybe wouldn't have necessarily needed to have followed us, for our knowledge alone, but they appreciated our point of view.
Hmm.
And so there was some overlap there, but not not so much, right? She has a lot of freelancers. She has a lot of SEO, like content writers, who follow her, like people who are in writing, doing all that kind of stuff. And now my audience is primarily, since I sort of pivoted all into AI, um it's like indie builders and creators and business professionals of all kinds who are just interested in AI. It's a lot more eclectic, or well, it's two things. It's either very AI focused or very eclectic, and just like the most random people who happen to be the right personality type to think AI is fascinating.
Right. So did partnering with Erica, do you think that it had a significant impact on your customer acquisition, like as opposed to just having launched a copywriting course yourself?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Um her audience was hungry for this, and they were
Hmm.
they were really enthusiastic about the product. And I think my audience was also really interested in it for a variety of reasons. Like the bundle was called Hooked on Writing Hooks, and the premise is that if nobody gets hooked by the first sentence or couple of sentences, or like the opening of your content, the rest of it basically has no value because it's not getting seen. So in order to get the value from the rest, you got to get the value from the top. And I think that resonates with a lot of people. Like, I'm sure that you've had that experience where you spend 6 hours on something, you post it, and it underperforms like really badly, and you're like,
Yeah.
why did I just put all that time into it?
Yeah.
So my audience was interested, but her audience was like just downright hungry for it, because freelancers and copywriters and SEOs and stuff, this is like this is how they earn their income. It's not just about those 6 hours; it's about their paycheck.
Hmm.
Um, but in a lot of the reviews and the testimonials we got from people, they said like the AI was their favorite part. And this was really interesting. It was like, Erica's got great frameworks and she's brilliant, but it's also a little bit hard to apply those frameworks in your own category or topic or what you write about, all this stuff. And by
Hmm.
taking those frameworks and creating AI chatbots for all of them, what people were able to do is like immediately apply the framework to something they were working on, get an idea of like, oh, this is kind of how that framework would work, this is what it would look like, this is how it would go. They may not use that actual, like it would generate a hook, for example, using like the TAS framework is thesis, antithesis, synthesis. So it's like you're already getting like, oh, my brain is breaking, like what do those words mean? I'm having a hard time thinking this through. And then you put it in there and you go, oh, this isn't so hard. It's like an idea and a counterpoint and a solution,
Yeah.
and so people really liked how it actually made learning easier and applying the frameworks much easier. And
Hmm.
it wasn't like normally in the AI world, it's just like, oh, give me a magic pill and have the AI do stuff for me. And here I feel like we went a lot deeper in it. Like this is actually it's part teaching tool, part productivity accelerator. Like it was doing a lot more than that on account of the frameworks being so good.
That's awesome, man. And so do you have any like specific data points in terms of which parts of the courses were being utilized the most by the audience?
Oh, I imagine I could, but I haven't really gone into those things. Like, I use Kajabi as a platform, and it has metrics
Hmm.
like in terms of people who quote unquote complete a module, but they have
Hmm.
to click a button to complete it. And I don't have any more in-depth metrics than that.
Hmm.
So like, but I could probably go through and see like which ones were more completed than the others. For me, like kind of like what we were talking about earlier, I'm out in front, ahead at this game, and I'm trying to maintain my position. And
Hmm.
sometimes that means skipping the retrospective on the content and moving on to the next thing.
For sure.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I only ask because it's almost like people do with content, right? Well, to see what performs well and then kind of use that to inform what they're making next. I was wondering if you applied a similar process to whatever your next endeavor is going to be for AI.
Yeah, I mean, definitely the feedback and the to be frank, like the bill. So I'm paying for all the API calls for the chatbots, and just seeing like people are, it's costing me $3 to $10 a day. These chatbots are running, like people are using them, and they're using them enough to like cost me real money, right? Like, and to me that was the biggest signal, was like, and they're still using them. It's like that we gave them this toolkit that they're
Mhm.
it wasn't just in the weeks, like the 2 weeks after the people bought the course. It's like it's still going. And so I absolutely want to make like more, like because I want to make my AI more accessible. And like I have a lot of courses where, or in the lesson there's a prompt, and then if you're in there, you're reading along. If you wanted to try it, you'd have to cut and paste, open up a new tab, like find Chat GPT or whatever language model, paste it in there, put in whatever other kind of input you needed. Like if it's a prompt that requires a topic or a content idea or some text to analyze, like now you're spending minutes like getting that done. It's a lot of friction, and I think a lot of people look at it, they read it, they appreciate it, and then they move on, and then maybe they walk out only actually having tested like 10% of the prompts in the course, like the ones that mean the most to the thing that they're working on right now. And I have this suspicion that if I put these into chatbots and made it like one click easy to run these things, that people would use them and get a lot more value out of them. And so that was like the really big transformation that I got from that.
All right. So you just had me thinking maybe the future is using something like you're saying, like using a chatbot instructor to walk people through these prompts and kind of demonstrate how it all functions with them so they can remove any friction and whatsoever, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the big goal for the future of education, is to somehow involve a personalized, tutor that can work with you on the material. And I've actually been kind of theory crafting what it might look like to train an AI to be able to do that, because you sort of need to do a meta analysis of the content and have it understand not just like what's on the page, but like who is it that could be in the course, and what are they trying to do, and how does what's on the page relate to that, and what's the context around all this stuff, and
Mhm.
does the bot need to know other parts of the course or other courses that you have? Like there's a lot of interesting questions. But like for example, I have a prompt that takes a lesson or a transcript or something. It takes some content, and what it does is it generates a list of all the questions that can be answered by that content and what all the answers are. And so, and then you could take the output of that and go back and train a chatbot, not just to know the content, but also to be able to answer like all the questions that are somewhere in your course.
Mhm.
Imagine just being able to go in there and ask it, and it could just pull out the answer. So like there's things like that we got to think about to make that dream a reality and make it work really well. But it's definitely, I think it's within reach with today's technology.
It is, yeah. It's funny. You just reminded me, like, I was showing my wife last night how you can learn, like, because I read a lot of books, right? But reading a book takes a day or two or whatever, and it's like you don't always have the day. So you obviously know this, but you can use chat to give you kind of the key insights and actionable takeaways. But my short-term memory is good enough that it kind of makes my long-term memory suffer, So it's like I can hold that in my head for a week, but then all those learnings are gone. But I've got it so now that it'll interview me using the Socratic method with the key insights and actionable takeaways. So it's like 15 minutes, asks you all the questions like you're having a dialogue with Socrates, and then you kind of come away with like a much deeper understanding. And it's just like trying to find these new models that we can use to understand.
Yeah. It's awesome that you do that. I think a lot of people could have access to that, but they wouldn't put in the work to actually retain the knowledge. Like they wouldn't want to,
Mhm.
they're like, why should I answer these questions that this AI is asking me? Like it doesn't care, not
Yeah.
realizing how valuable this is. And I think that hopefully we'll see almost like a transformation in society where practices like this become more common, or maybe even taught in school. Like a lot of people are like, how are you going to know if somebody, did their homework, or if they just asked Chat GPT to write it? And I think that in the pursuit of like new lessons, imagine your homework is now to have the AI ask you a bunch of questions about something to improve your recall of the knowledge or something like that. Lots of interesting stuff there. But um, yeah, there's so many things that people who care about personal development can do with an AI acting as your coach, as your consultant, as your learning partner. Yeah, it's really incredible for anybody who actually cares to take the time and put the energy in to do it.
Yeah, man, it feels like we're on the precipice of like this is like our printing press or something, but it feels almost bigger, right? And it's wild that it's like, I mean, maybe people didn't realize it with the printing press either, but it's like there's a segment of society right now who has no clue what's happening still. And it's like, man, you don't see that we're on like this amazing trajectory, right? So but when it comes to the AI tech that you're using. Can you kind of give me some of the details for like the specific tools that you're using to build it out?
Yeah, so every week, every month, like thousands of new AI tools come out.
Yeah.
And after reviewing many of them in the first half of this year, I kind of gave up on most of the new tools and I just went back to like the core because I found that like I'm good at prompt engineering. I'm pretty good at automation. Like there's really only a few things um that I need to do for my work and I like having full control of them. So like I'm using ChatGPT like most people. I have a pro subscription, so I'm using GPT-4 on a lot of things. I also have a subscription to Poe.com, which has a great free plan as well. Poe has ChatGPT, it has Claude, it has Llama 2, which is the highest performing open source model right now. It's got a few others, Palm, Google's Palm, all in one place. And so that's a really awesome place to be able to experiment with different models.
Hmm.
Claude has the 100,000 token context window, so you can put the equivalent of an entire book into your prompt. But Claude isn't as cognitively capable as ChatGPT, so you need to be a little bit more careful on like how many tasks or how many steps in your task like you give it to do. It's better like one thing at a time with Claude, where you can do like 5 things at a time with ChatGPT, and it usually works. And that's where I spend most of my time. Yeah. The other two things that I use a lot are Perplexity, which is like ChatGPT with really good internet search
Hmm.
and understanding of the content. And then I also use something called Consensus, which is it basically does a an AI analysis of scientific papers and research studies. And so you can ask it a question like, what foods are the best for building muscle, or like, whatever your question is. And it'll actually go and look at all the research and it'll come back and tell you like, oh, like this kind of chive was found in the research to like actually do this. So not just like what the fitness influencer says on Instagram, but now
Right.
I've got like the scientific study. So Consensus is really cool if you care about like the science behind stuff and you really want to know like, is it true that this happens or how this works.
Hmm.
I've learned a lot from that.
That's really cool. And so, like, just when it came to integrating that technology into the actual course itself, did you come across any challenges that were kind of difficult for you guys to overcome?
Yeah, so in the course I'm using Zapier interfaces to create a chatbot that's run on ChatGPT 4. It's actually not that hard once you figure it out. So you end to this kind of chatbot sounds fancy. What it really is it's one prompt that's embedded in a chat interface, and it's expecting you to give it a certain kind of input, and then it's going to give you one kind of output. So it's one in, one out. Like it's basically a prompt masquerading as a chatbot. That was really easy because you just basically take your prompt, you put it in there, and then you add one sentence that's like, for whatever the user says, do this. And then the rest is the same, and then the user says what they say and it does it.
Hmm.
That was fairly easy to do. Wasn't easy to like make it a great experience. I wish I could better embed them in the course platform, or like figure out how do we incorporate chat and instruction and videos and text lessons all together with it, because chat, when you put in something and you hit enter, it gets longer, right? It gets an output. And so it's not like so easy as just to embed a little box, because now that box needs to be scrolled, and then you're scrolling boxes within a lesson that's also scrolling like on a page that also, it's just too much scrolling.
Right.
um yeah, really the the technical piece was mostly down to the choice of words and the testing of the prompts and figuring out like, how do I actually take Erica's genius and like translate this into an instruction. And fortunately she's a very structured thinker, so it wasn't that hard. I think for some people it would have been harder because like, she already had written about these topics in a really clear, concise, and like well structured way, and so it's easy to distill what the basis of her insights were into that. But yeah, so the AI side of the tech was pretty easy.
Hmm. That's awesome. And then so when it comes to your course, do you envision you and Erica doing kind of a version 2? And then if so, do you think that you'll have some retention from the first course? Or do you think that you'll be looking towards a whole new market?
Yeah, well, so anyone, if we do, and we have it planned actually for November to open the gates up for a week again. Um, anyone who has the original are going to have the next version. We're going to add, maybe probably two cool things, some additions, like make it better and do another release. And as a collaboration, it's helpful to do these releases at a moment in time, because to do the revenue splitting, to handle refunds, like we have a really generous refund policy. There are very few that refunds that we ended up doing, but it's like you need to hold a certain percentage of the money for 30 days, and then issue out the refunds. So like we're doing some accounting here to make all this work. So we're gonna kind of open the doors maybe 4 times a year, make it available, and then commit to like 1 or 2 improvements in between each cycle. And I think it's going to do really well. Like we had a lot of people who are like, hey, can I secretly buy your thing? But as part of the marketing, we were like, hey, doors close on this date. And if you break that promise, then I feel like you lose face in society. So it's weird. It's weird when people are like, I want to spend like over $100. Like, can you just let me give it to you? And you're like, no, I can't.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the kind of cycle that it's in right now.
I mean, I think that's it's a key insight though, right? In business, it's because I think so many of us get like we have a good sense for scammers and things that feel fishy. And if you have genuine scarcity, then it's really easy to say, well, no, I'm sorry, we have to do it next time. But then we've all been to those websites where it's like, once the countdown hits 0, the sale's over, but the buy button's still there and it's been there for a year.
Yeah, that's no good. Now, if you ever find the buy button still on my site, it's probably because like I messed something up, or like I'm asleep and I need to turn it off by hand when I wake up, and like but yeah, like I think that especially in this industry of like I'm not saying that all the other AI influencers out there are scammers. Like there's a lot of good information out there, and but there are people who are taking advantage of the hype cycle. And I think it's really important when you're part of a group that has some people like that in it, or maybe a disproportionately large portion of people like that in it. It's so important that you show integrity, and that your stuff is even more valuable than maybe you would have done if it was in a different industry or on a different topic.
Yeah, I think that's something I'll definitely have to think about and make sure that I'm trying to provide the right kind of value. I mean, I know I've seen one of your tweets recently where, and I'm kind of thinking along the same lines, but like there's so many platitudes in a sense out there for AI, right? Like, hey, use these 14 tools, or like some obvious affiliate marketing and stuff. Whereas I really want to get into like specific use cases. Here's how you can make your business better. Here's how you can make your life better, and actually watch me go through it, as opposed to kind of just putting out the general high level stuff.
Yeah. I mean, when it comes to social, it's funny because people love that list of like 15 free AI tools,
Yeah.
because it gives you this huge rush of dopamine. Like, oh, look at all this power that I have access to for free. It's brilliant. And you use 0 out of 15 because it's also like this sort of useless information. Where does it go? What does it do?
Mm-hmm.
I really like to focus on practical use cases, on real business value, and like how can this actually make you money, or make you happy, or make you like allow you to do your work in a different and better way, allow you to
Yeah.
do something you could have never done before. And that stuff is hard. It doesn't give the big dopamine hit in the same way, because it's like this requires some effort. Like for your life to be better is not just to passively look at a list of tools. It's like, now imagine actually having to use one and having to take 5 minutes to explore that or experience it, or maybe do it wrong until you do it right, or let
Mm-hmm.
so those posts don't go as far, and understandably so. But I think it's really important that it's what we have out there on social media isn't just a bunch of platitudes and lists of tools and like things that don't mean anything. I think we sort of have to bring a new conversation to say, no, here's how people are actually using this to solve problems in their business, and how they're actually making money. And not in the sense of like the tweets where it's like everyone should be making $10,000 a month with a AI generated coloring book business. Here's how, like not that kind of making money, like making real money, not, pipe dream money.
That's funny. All right. So how did AI technology facilitate your community engagement, or I guess did it at all when you were marketing your course, or was that more of still you kind of doing it organically in a analog way, let's say?
Yeah. So I write about topics that are related to technology that exists today. And the AI models, most of them are trained on data sets from like 2021
Yeah.
and prior and things like that. And so you can't use AI to create that much content about today's state of AI. So I don't actually end up using it very much in my content process, like to write things and things like that. But I do end up using it to better understand my customer or my audience, or get into their head a little bit about like, what do they fear? What are they frustrated by? What do they want? What do they
Mhm.
need? Um, or to take some of my ideas, like sometimes I'll do like I'll talk into a microphone for 5 minutes, get a transcript of me rambling about a topic, and then use AI to distill out the good ideas or organize the ideas a little bit, and then I'll write, like take that and write that by hand. So from a content creation perspective, it's there, but it's maybe not there in the way that people envision. Like they see, like, going into chat gpt and write me an article about this, and that's not how I do it. I do a lot of other things with it. um in terms of some of the other ways that I've been using it, though, it's been interesting, like the chatbots, for example. When we were marketing the collaboration, I published one of them as a marketing tool, like, and people could just go in and use the chatbot and see, like, here's
Mhm.
the framework, here's the bot. And that like tripled our sales for like the few days after I did that. I think it really like sold the quality of information and quality of the course, and people
Mhm.
hadn't ever seen it before, but it proved right there, like, yeah, you're going to get something useful. Like, if you think this free preview is useful, you get that. So that was a really cool marketing weapon. And again, why like I'm so bullish on it. Probably those are the two big areas. Yeah.
Hmm. That's interesting. That's a really unique kind of lead magnet, I guess, would be the trendy way to call it. But really, it's a free sample, right? You're letting people get their hands on it, try it out to see what's actually possible, because it's way easier to feel something than to try and explain it, especially when it's some kind of new tech.
Yeah. And if you could see yourself using that as part of your daily process, and you knew that by buying this course you would have permanent access to it, I think that some people, it went through their mind like, hey, this is kind of like maybe worth the value of some percentage of the course, like just this. And
Mm.
apparently it's got 10 of these in it, and a bunch of other knowledge, and like a 1 hour master class with Erica and Rob doing editing, and and all this other stuff. The If you want to sell something, the goal is to create this gulf between the perception of the value of the thing and the price of it, right? So the and it's not enough, in my opinion, for the price and the value to be equal. You want the value to feel like 10 times as much as the price, like a no-brainer kind of price, right? And so techniques like that, I think, work really well to help people go, oh yeah, this is super valuable, like I want way more of this, like this is making that price look like not very much at all now.
That's awesome, man. And so I want to touch on the financial aspects from the course, if that's okay with you. Is it
Sure.
possible for you to provide like a breakdown of the revenue that you generated between you and Erica on your first launch?
Yeah, so we did about 60,000 in sales. Um, I remember because we only had like 2 hours left or something when we finally crossed 60K. Like we just barely came in at 60, and we were like, we made it. We were partying on WhatsApp or whatever. But yeah, so it's like 61.5 or something like that was the final numbers. I think we had 6 refunds or something like that. 3 were people like, look, I never got to the course, like, things are tight, and three were just taking advantage of the no questions asked policy, and
Right.
didn't have a lot to say about it. And maybe they took the content and used it, and that's fine. So yeah, so it netted out to about exactly 60K. There's a Stripe takes a percentage, like it's close to 3%. It's like 2.4%, something like that. So there's some transaction fees and some other things there, but yeah, ended up being, so the build took us probably 6 weeks. Not like part time, on sale for a week, 30K each. Not a bad use of time for like, a month, 1 to 2 months worth of work part time.
No, that's yeah, that's fantastic. And were there any kind of initial financial investments that you had to put into building out the course that would kind of come off the bottom line?
Not really.
Yeah.
Um, like the platform I was already using for my other courses, but it's like $150 a month. But it's like that's where I run my business. We bought a domain name for like $12 or whatever it was. Like, it was all things that, compared to the profit, like it negligible negligible costs, really. We didn't use any like graphic designers. I did all the graphic design myself. We didn't use any outside editors. Erica's an editor, like by trade. Like, she edited most of the stuff, which is great because I'm like a typo typhoon in terms of my brain just can't see typos for some reason, but it can
Yeah.
put them out. Uh, yeah, but like I was saying earlier, so the only like big cost was the cost of inference with the AI chatbots. And I think in total that's added up to some amount of hundreds of dollars, like under 500, now months, a couple of months after the course went live.
Hmm.
So more than the equivalent of like one or two purchases, but really not anything to be too worried about. I feel like it's been worth the money. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. I mean, what a good advertiser and kind of a proof of concept for building out your next course too, seeing that it still is holding value for people.
Yeah. And the next time we market it, I'm going to come out with chatbots in the marketing out of the gate. Right. Like that was just kind of a random idea I had on like for the fourth out of 7 days that we were selling. I was like, oh, I should put this out there. That would be cool.
Mhm.
Um, and now it'll be a part of my marketing strategy for everything. And I want to do it for other stuff. For like, I have this membership where you can get my other courses now. If you join the membership, it's for a low monthly fee. Like, I want to do chatbot, like a chatbot of the week.
Mhm.
Once I have the time to set that kind of program up, I think it's really powerful.
Yeah, that's awesome. And one thing I meant to ask you earlier is what's the platform you're actually building the chatbots on? Is it BotPress or VoiceFlow, or is it something like those?
Yeah, well, so the super simple bots that I did for this are just it's Zapier interfaces.
Oh wow, that's it, eh?
So it's nothing. Yeah,
Yeah.
BotPress is really powerful and you can build some really cool stuff.
Hmm.
But unnecessary at that level. The other platform that I'm like, I have other projects that I'm working on where I'm developing like AI agents and things, and I'm using a tool called Magic ML, Magic with a CK, and then ML. God, getting a domain is so hard these days, right? Um, and Magic is like a no code builder, no code, low code builder for AI agents, and you can, wire up different things kind of like in a flow chart. So when the user inputs, you can do an analysis on the input. You can do like a multi-step process on that input, like BotPress, in many ways. Um, and but that's the tool that kind of fits the way that I like to work the best. It just the interface is intuitive to me. The way that it's put together is intuitive, and I like the development team. But I think that like I've been a VoiceFlow customer for years. I have custom Alexa apps that I've
Oh.
created, like really basic stuff. Like I have one called Rainy Nights where you open Rainy Nights and it plays a very like a specific, my favorite sleeping like rain sound that I
Yeah.
like to sleep to on loop forever. And that's all it does, right? But I needed a platform to create that. And so like I've got one called Brush Hair, that helps siblings figure out whose turn it is to brush hair, that I made for somebody,
Oh my
like
God.
so it's just like basic stuff like that. But yeah, VoiceFlow is pretty cool. Like I haven't played with the AI parts that they've added recently, but it's always been a good tool.
Yeah, that man, that's hilarious. I need to get an app like yours for my kids figuring out whose turn it is to go first in the shower. That's a battle every night.
Yeah, pretty easy to do. And
Yeah.
you can't argue with Alexa. It's like, hey, she said your name, it's your turn.
Man, that's awesome. So have you explored other revenue streams apart from maybe the courses and the memberships for your next edition here that maybe are influenced by AI capabilities?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ways that people like me earn money, right? There's the coaching consulting side, and that can go in so many different directions. And that's something that I could talk about, but I'll list out a few others. There's like affiliate and sponsorship type stuff where people looking for AI influencers. I get messages all the time from tools that I either don't have time to evaluate, or I take a look at them and I go, this isn't, I'm not comfortable recommending this. Like it's
Yeah.
not there yet. And then we've got the courses and things, and there's like newsletter sponsorships and sort of more like ad type stuff as well. So usually it's some mix of all of that stuff that people like me are earning from. I like the courses the most because it's like you build something and then you sort of earn from it passively, and there isn't a lot of ongoing attention required for certain aspects of the business. Although now that I have the membership, I do have a community of people who are paying for access to my attention in some regard, but also access to each other. And part of my goal there is to there's so many super smart people to like connect them with each other. Like I don't need to be the one answering all these questions. Like you guys know this stuff better than me in some cases. Um, on the coaching and consulting side, I do two kinds of things. One of them is I do like a one-off call. Um, and like it's like 350 to 450 and like $450, 60 minutes to 90 minutes type thing. And we'll solve one prompt engineering problem or one branding and positioning problem for your AI startup, or I'll bring some kind of business knowledge and we'll work through some things, or I'll help a creator kind of conceptualize their course that they want to build, something like that. Those are really fun for me because it's like I can make a huge difference in somebody's approach in a very short period of time. But I don't do a lot of them because they're like I don't like advertising for it because it's kind of a lot of money for an hour, and I don't want to look like I'm money grubbing, but it's like that's also the amount it takes to be worth my time.
Mhm.
But those are great. Like I love that. And then right now I have a $20,000 consulting contract with a startup where I'm building them an AI that is going to be a core part of their product they want to bring to market, and they
Mhm.
want to go into their seed fundraising with something to show. So they're like, hey, can you make us a prototype that's going to do what ultimately we want this business to do, so we can prove that this is a really awesome business and hopefully get better terms in the race. So I'm doing that.
Mhm.
So that's kind of a big one. It's a multi-month project.
That's cool. Is it possible for you to share kind of the function there, or is that behind an NDA?
I can tell you some things, but not the specifics just yet. But it's a business coach slash consultant that could be deployed across an organization, and even perform some functions that are normally more like HR or manage or between you and your manager. So if you think about it this way, most employees don't have access to like, really nice coaches or consultants that cost hundreds of dollars an hour. And they also, if they have an issue and they need to go talk to somebody, there are some barriers in the way. Like if you go to HR and complain about your boss, you might secretly worry that it could somehow come back on you and get you into trouble, right?
Mhm.
Your boss finds out you complained about them. Now they think you're out, like there's problems there. So the idea behind this is to both give people access to some level of coaching and consulting that they otherwise couldn't, and then B, to do it all in a private and encrypted and de-identified way where any data that's stored is stored in a way where it's always safe for them,
Mhm.
um, and can't be accessed by leadership, etc. And therefore, if they were having a problem like that they really cared about, there could be no retaliation by trying to work through it with the AI. And so some of the thinking is that there's like a shadow culture in a lot of companies, then people aren't addressing it because they're worried about blowback. But maybe there's a way that we can allow AI to help people navigate these complex relationships, these difficult situations, understand themselves, and maybe the actions they can take, like all those kinds of things.
Mhm.
So we're kind of creating this confidential confidant slot, but it also happens to be a really great leader and mentor and all these other things.
That's fascinating. That would certainly kind of revamp the nature of HR in a lot of big corporations, right? Where HR is, I mean, they say that they're there for the benefit of the smaller worker in the organization, but quite often they're there just to kind of cover the butt of the senior executive or whatever the larger corporation, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to end up being an interesting interplay because
Mhm.
you're not, your butt isn't covered if there's no proof that the conversation was had that would have covered your butt. So like at some points the AI is going to say, hey, you really should talk to a human about this. Like this is a serious problem. Like you need
Right.
to do something about it. Like but I think on the other hand, the truth of the matter is that those people who maybe now are performing more of like a butt covering action, to keep the metaphor, um, they actually want, or the original intention behind that role is to make this a better place, to invest in human capital,
Mhm.
like to improve retention, to improve training, to give people the skills they need to achieve success in their careers, all of that kind of stuff. And that stuff is worth a ton of money. Like, you know companies spend so much on all of these things related to retention and hiring and performance reviews and blah blah blah, right?
Mhm.
What if we could make a meaningful change in all of that? I think this is a really big industry, and so it's like one that I'm kind of excited to be working on. And for my part, I'm sort of obsessed with AI personality design and experience design, and
Yeah.
like, do I actually want to spend time with this AI or not? I think for this company, whether their product succeeds or fails is going to be within the first like 2 minutes you spend with the AI. Do you like it or not? And like if you don't, you're probably never going to go back unless your boss forces you to. And if you do, you probably end up finding yourself, developing almost like a, let's call it a relationship with the AI, where you come to count on this tool in a way that people have never really had a tool to count on before. That that they felt sort of this way about. We're really getting into some weird stuff for humanity with this. Like, if we have an AI that's really good at empathizing, you're going to feel something if you're talking about your feelings and the AI is really empathizing well with you. And
Hmm.
then you're going to face these conflicting emotions of like, dude, how do I feel about the fact that this thing isn't real? Or is it such a good simulation of realness that I can kind of like move past that and go, it is sort of real. It does sort of care in its own AI way. Lots
Yeah.
of, yeah, lots of weird stuff.
It is, man. I know I'm running out of time with you here, but I could talk about that with you forever. I think that stuff is just so fascinating, man. It's like just thinking about like there are legal obligations for a psychologist or a psychiatrist at a certain point, right? If somebody says something to them, then they're obligated to go to the police or wherever, right? Like for certain, there's certain, key phrases and stuff that they need to report. And it's like, I wonder if we're going to get to that place with different language models, right? Where it's like, okay, well, there's a promise of privacy and encryption up to a point.
Yeah. Actually, that's part of the product design with this. If you're a danger to yourself or others, the AI is supposed to try to figure that out. But obviously, it's very sensitive how that might be. And so we're trying
Mm-hmm.
to build it in a way that it's a it attempts to protect the person's privacy. So for one of the thought, and this isn't fully in the design, but one of the thoughts was like, let's say you say or you type out like, oh, I'm gonna kill Carol, but it's like it could be taken, as I'm gonna kill Carol, and it's probably like she drank the last Diet Coke and
Yeah.
I'm frustrated, right?
Yeah.
So we're gonna build some systems to try and figure that out. But there it also might be that some overseer of the system gets a message that says, "Hey, an employee, like, out of context. I'm not telling you who, not telling you what. Said I'm gonna kill redacted." Like, would you like to see this conversation? Like, here's the analysis or something. Like, we're going to try and figure out, give the system as many ways as possible to protect people. And then if we need to check with a human to sort of do it in a way where, again, it's like that person's privacy is being maintained at the highest level. And only if we really do kind of get to the bottom of it and think it's a danger, would it expose people? But yeah, like that's the one that that's the one thing that the team wants to do with that tool too, because you know those are important situations, as frustrating as it might be to get ratted out. If you're gonna hurt yourself, like, we need to do
Yeah.
something.
No, exactly. So I want to return quickly to your partnership with Erica, and I mean I think it's safe for me to say that you'd evaluate it as a success, right? The course that you have so far, and kind of looking forward, it seems like you've got good plans to continue monetizing it and working there. But do you have any plans to collaborate with other creators in the future, or kind of build out other courses with other people?
Yeah, I'd love to, and I've been trying to think about how would I do this in the context of my existing membership, as well as sort of like what would be the terms if it was a more imbalanced collaboration. But I like I'm so fascinated by and obsessed with the practical applications of AI. I want to go to take everybody's proprietary frameworks and turn them into some kind of AI, something that helps you apply those frameworks.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, I would absolutely love to do this. Now, um, some of those I may end up trying to bring into my membership and figure out how do I compensate people for like sharing a portion of their knowledge in the context of this broader site that other people have access to. Some I may do as one-offs with Erica. as a creator, I don't want to exhaust my audience and do it so many times that people are like tired of me trying to sell them some new something. So I have to be careful with that. Um, but I'm sort of like actively looking for opportunities like this, and I think eventually I'd like to maybe even do one a quarter, or like one every so often, where I sit down with somebody and really do something neat, especially somebody who's not an AI person at all, like
Hmm.
Erica was, where it's like they know that an amazing AI tool would increase the value, but they're not the right person to implement that tool. Like I want to become the go-to person to bridge the gap and kind of like the trusted source of like, hey, this is like a Rob Lennon thing. We know that it's going to be good. Like it's not just some little cheap AI play to sell a few more courses.
That's awesome, man. So I think that that'll probably wrap up the kind of case study portion. I wanted to pick your brain for a quick second on where you see the intersection of AI and the creator economy maybe 5 years down the road. And I know it's pretty tough to predict with the exponential growth right now, but I'm just curious where you see this headed.
Oh, there's so many facets of this. I think one of the ones that a lot of people are really interested in is the place where a creator becomes either AI enabled or an AI itself. So like we had this there was a I think she was on Snapchat, attractive 20 something, and on YouTube, who created this like AI version of herself based on like 2000 hours of YouTube videos and Snapchat videos or whatever, all that stuff, and was charging $1 a minute to interact with the AI version of her. But you could kind of get her like your girlfriend for $1 a minute. It was like it was straight up pricing that reminded me of like those old 1-900 numbers like in the 90s or whatever. It's
Yeah.
like, damn, that's expensive. Um, so there are people who are going to want to like take something that they have, some asset about their personality, about their knowledge, and create these experiences that run themselves based on AI. And I think in 5 years we're going to have fully human looking avatars that look and sound like people if they want, that can operate with some level of their knowledge. And that's that. But people, they still want to be with the human you too. So like, I don't think that's always going to work. I don't think that's always going to sell. But it might augment things. Like, imagine if you join my membership in 5 years and you get Robo Rob, who kind of knows and does and says all the things that Rob would do. And so if real Rob isn't around, you can unlimitedly ask Robo Rob, and it's like 50% is good, which is better than zero.
Mm.
So lots of new products like that I see coming. But there's also just all these new ways of operating, right? Like for me, I have a lot of like, I'm a visionary. I have a lot of ideas, and previously I couldn't execute on all those ideas because I didn't have, like, I'm not a software engineer, or I don't know this, or I don't have the expertise in that. And AI kind of like pulls all that stuff out, and it goes, you can apply and create things based on your vision using the help of AI that like otherwise wouldn't be possible, or would you just need to spend so much money on them that you could never really do it. So I think we're going to see a whole new kind of world of creators who are people who have like, they have that sense of what the world wants, and they are able to give it to people like never before, whether it be audio content, video content, images, these experiences with actual AIs, lots of stuff like that. And it's going to be this whole unlocking of like creativity and genius and like business sense, and people who were savvy but couldn't have done things in the past are going to start to take over. And I for one think it's going to be a really fascinating time, but it's also going to probably, the floodgates are going to open on what's possible, and it's going to be a lot harder to then maybe find what's good.
Yeah, I mean, and that's certainly a challenge now, right? Like trying to get the wheat from the chaff at this point. I can't imagine where it's going to be in 5 or 10 years.
Well, you'll just ask your AI what's good, and it'll tell you, right?
Yeah, you hope so, unless it's, like, so I mean, you were talking about perplexity earlier, and I think that the nice thing about using perplexity is that there's no SEO behind the results, right? So like I wonder when we're going to start to see SEO kind of pumped into ChatGPT's responses and Perplexity's responses, and that it becomes kind of like a secondary vessel for advertising like Google did.
Yeah, I mean there was a test feature in Bing to even include ads for a while that I think they deactivated
Mm.
because it just wasn't the right experience. But yeah, we're gonna get into this world where, how do people monetize like a chat? How do they monetize interaction with an
Yeah.
AI? Um, the ad model works really well, like on a website or in a newspaper or in a magazine, on TV, like in all these places. It doesn't work the same way as well, like when you're interacting with an AI. And I think that we're gonna maybe see a rise in like just literally paying subscriptions again. Like we can't monetize this in a non-disruptive way by putting an ad in there. So now you have to pay us like $2, to like use this thing.
Yeah.
I think we might see a return to that. And I think that that would be good. I don't know if the level of advertising that humans are exposed to is really optimal for our species. And like I for one wouldn't have a problem with something like that happening.
No, and man, I think that'd be a great way to go. Look, we're out of time here. I want to thank you so much for coming on, man. You've been incredibly generous with your time. I really, really appreciate it. Is it possible for you to maybe just to let everybody know where they can find you and check out all your work?
Yeah, so I'm at that Rob Lennon on X or Twitter. And if you want to check out my courses, my membership, it's lennonlabs.com. And there you can get $1,350, so 1,000 over $1,000 in courses for just $29 a month. Have access to my membership community, some really cool chatbots in there that I'm developing, and come to office hours twice a month, where I sit down and answer everyone's questions. So would love to have you.
That's awesome, buddy. Yeah, everybody can go check out Lennon Labs and Promptimus.
Yes, my super awesome prompt writing bot that everyone is into.
That's awesome, Rob. Well, thank you so much, man.
Thank you.